And then they both said they didn't want it.
No?
Yeah.
Did you lose your power?
Yeah, I don't think it was that long though.
Huh?
I don't think it was out that long.
Half hour?
Half hour?
That's amazing. The car took the pole right off.
Really? Where was that?
You know where I live?
Yeah.
About 2 telephone poles towards you.
Oh, really?
I don't know. It was a straight stretch, so I don't know how they hit it.
Texting. That's
Huh?
probably texting.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have them owned by and then as the younger ones come in, they'll transform over.
It's going down the line.
I know.
Never done it.
Are you serious?
Absolutely.
Get out. I don't get it. I don't get that.
I don't know, I think we volunteered yourself.
Never did anything.
You know that doesn't work that way, right?
Good evening.
Let's get in here, Mr. FinCom.
I got it.
I don't have my hearing aids.
What?
How are you, Mo?
Mr. FinCom, what's up?
How are you?
Good.
Behaving?
No.
Good boy.
Never.
Hello.
So we're back on masks, huh?
Hello.
How are you?
I was just
How are
here
you?
2 days ago. It is? Because a couple days ago it wasn't.
It became a state mandate, either yesterday or today.
As of yesterday,
What's up?
Boston's been since Monday.
since Monday.
Yep, you have to wear a mask in Boston unless you're outdoors.
Did not know that.
Trains, cabs, everything.
I think Cheryl's coming. I know Cynthia is not.
No, I didn't.
Time is it?
The longest meeting. The longest
Think we should give her another minute, or?
Yeah, Cheryl. Did she say she was coming?
She did.
Okay.
She did. The gals in your office are the best, I have to say, David.
What's not best?
The gals in your office are the best.
Oh, I know. They're really good. Thank you.
They are awesome. Yeah, she says I'll see you then. I appreciate the flexibility. I know we had a couple of reschedules, so I appreciate everybody making themselves available to come in tonight. And for your willingness to share some additional information on the budget, it's very helpful. On the agenda, we have approving the meeting minutes of August 12th. I don't know if I can have a motion from someone.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We're going to accept the meeting minutes of September 22nd for review. Can I get a motion for that?
Make that motion.
Thank you, Mo. Can I get a second? Thank you, Scott. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think we had a list of questions. Do you just want to go down the list, or do you have any particular order?
Yeah, I think that'd be best if you wanna, we can work through you if you wanna ask questions. I think, we've gone over our budget now with our school committee 3 times, finance committee twice, and with the board of selectmen once, so it's good for us to, go back. We'll refer back to the budget. It's our good opportunity for us to answer your questions, but it's also a good opportunity to talk about some of our needs moving forward, because we've talked a lot about that. So within the questions, we'll probably be able to provide you with information, but if there are follow-up questions, you can also ask those.
Great, thank you so much. I do, again, appreciate all your help with this. So budget line 3230 is teaching services, and we were wondering if we could get some help with the number of employees per classification for the past 2 years.
Sure, I'll handle that one. If you turn to the budget book that we gave you, that would be this. It's 33 pages long.
Yeah.
Was provided. It's just a little background on that, and before we start with this question, there are a number of questions that were asked in this memo that were answered at length, as Mark mentioned, during the previous 2 FinCom meetings, as well as at the school committee meetings and at the meeting with the Board of Selectmen. The budget book that we provided to everyone includes every single expense account that the school department uses. And to be efficient with our time, some of the questions have really, the detail is in here. There's a narrative. There's comparative information for 3 years. So to be efficient with our time, I will certainly answer your questions. However, I would expect that you refer to the pages that I give you and read the narratives that were provided on every single page for probably 75% of the accounts that require some explanation.
Okay, so
All right.
what page are we on?
You can go to page 6. So the number of employees for the Roselle McDonald teachers, 17. Howard teachers, 15.5. Middle.
So, I'm sorry, can you slow down, because where are you seeing those numbers? Down here in the bottom?
I'm answering your question. You said budget line 3230, which is teaching services. I
Yep.
used the total for that we were requested was $5,652,000, $251,000.
Yep.
So the question says the number of employees per classification. So which lines are you interested in?
So you were just rattling off some numbers, or where are those numbers?
They're
not listed.
The numbers aren't listed in the budget.
These are the numbers used to when we calculate the numbers for the total amount of salary.
So Kathy was just reading off the number of employees. It said, you asked the number of employees per classification, so.
Right.
So for example, the Roselle McDonald teachers, there are 17 teachers in that, on that category. So that would be the second line down.
I mean, exactly what
Does
was
it
your
say
question?
there's 17 teachers there? That's where you said the numbers are here, so I'm just wondering where I'm missing them.
No, you asked for the numbers. They're not in here. The
Oh,
dollar
okay.
amounts related to that are here.
Okay, yeah, we're looking for the number of teachers. So there's 17 teachers at the Roselle, and then can you say that?
15.5 at the Howard, 43.7 at the middle senior high school. There's 1 librarian at the high school, 4 kindergarten teachers, and 4 kindergarten aides. Now, you have to remember that this budget was created with the numbers that were applicable in February and March.
Yep,
So things
understood.
could have changed, you know, since this was passed.
So February, March 2020?
2021.
2021. Okay. Okay, so 17 teachers at the Rose L. And, sorry, can you remind me what grades these schools are?
Grades 1 to 3.
1 to 3? And then the Howard is
4, 5, to 6.
4 to 6. The middle senior is 7 to 12.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. That's helpful. Does anyone on the committee have any other questions on the breakdown of the teachers at each of these schools, or what, any other information you wanted to know about those folks? No?
These numbers do change.
Potentially year to year, if we have bubble classes, we might have, well, for example, we have a bubble class in our 3rd grade, so we will have a teacher going from 3rd grade to 4th grade for next year. So they're not always constant. There is fluctuation depending on the number of students, the classes, and so forth.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So that's as of February 2021. Have those numbers really overall changed significantly year over year from 2020?
None has been added to the general fund budget.
What does that mean?
The general fund is the budget that you vote on, which is right here presented to you.
Is there a different budget?
There are budgets for each of our grants. And so we have been able to add some teachers at the middle senior high school, the social worker that we desperately needed through grant funding. And you do understand that all the grants are completely separate from this budget. We have listed all the school contributions,
Okay.
but it's a bottom line budget that the town citizens vote on from the general fund. The grants are in addition.
Okay, and so I'm sorry, you added one, what was that?
A social worker at
Middle senior high school,
Through the grant.
But that grant will become general fund budget at some
No.
point. The grant will
The
expire.
grant money.
Grant will, that's a good question, yes.
grants most likely will expire, same with the ESSER funding. So these positions that we've added due to desperate need of them have been things that we've put in and satisfied our needs for the moment, but as presented last spring, there are needs that we're going to rely on the town to make up for these needs. They're not wants, they're truly needs.
Yeah, no, I guess my only point is like the grant's a great start, but at some point, chances are that position will eventually make it into the what are we calling it?
The general
budget.
Correct. That's
That's the goal, and for example, a concrete example would be back in FY '21, when it was presented, a budget, it was cut by $70,000 for a mental health professional. If that was in there, that would obviously have continued, and that person would have continued, but we haven't been able to add that position.
So can you tell me what role the social worker plays? Like, what specifically do they do for the students?
They coordinate a lot of the services in terms of
Counseling services, they work with families in crisis, they are the go-between between families and their surround care, wraparound services, for example, on-site counseling. They will see groups of students, they will see individual students, they'll do classroom visits, they will meet with teachers, they'll have conference with teachers. There's a wide variety of things that they're doing throughout the day to meet the needs of the kids.
So right now, these are not independent contractors, they are employees of the town.
that's right.
So that position will fall, I think, to Jeff's point, into the general budget that we'll review in the spring.
I mean, as of right now, it's paid for out of the outside grant, so we would certainly make it known that, yes, these are additional funds that we need for this.
Okay,
Correct.
okay, that's helpful, thank you.
And another example, just quickly, would be, we had that 5th kindergarten class this year. The enrollment, the projections through the census were significantly off. So to provide a reasonable class size for our kindergarten students, we had a 5th kindergarten teacher. We did that by supplementing, adding more school choice students, which allowed us to pay for that kindergarten teacher. So that goes into the 15% of the school contributions through school choice. And a little bit later on, it's asked about the number of school choice students and so forth. But again, that was us not taking money out of the general fund budget, nor taking out of a grant, but funding it on our own because it was a definite need. We were looking at potentially kindergarten classes around 24 and 25, which was not going to be acceptable.
So can you help me understand, but if we had extra children in the kindergarten, we solved the need for an additional kindergarten teacher by bringing more children into the school?
Correct. We did around $5,000 per student. Bringing in more students allowed us to kind of recoup that amount of money. And so, but we could divide up that 100 kids by 5 rather than only by 4, by adding, I think we added 6 or 7. Nope, sorry, it was more than that. It was, we had about 10 students.
So you added 10 students to fund 1 kindergarten teacher, and were those students like sort of spread over different grades?
Yep. We had that prior to making the class selections.
So how many school choice kids do we bring into the kindergarten?
I'd have to look a little further. I think it was around 10.
Correct me if I'm wrong, so that's a lifetime commitment to those kids until they graduate from high school. Is that correct?
Correct. And it's also a lifetime commitment to receive funding for us. So that would be $50,000. If it's 10 students, around $50,000 every year that supplements the budget.
David, does the town have any projection on the increased number of houses? Right, I mean, I know there's a big development being built, I know there's some other stuff that I'm just concerned that the school choice gets smothered at some point, down the road. I don't know what.
Yeah, I think that's in our list of things we wanted to chat about, is how we're gonna deal with that, right?
Yeah.
It's obviously a great source of revenue and allows you to be flexible.
Yeah, it's a little counterintuitive, though, to bring more school choice students in so that you can fund a teacher because you brought 10 school choice kids to kindergarten. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it can spiral, right? Maybe it's me.
I think the important point too was this year, I don't want to say it was an error, but the census numbers were received. They added school choice to even out the classrooms, and then found out that the census numbers were inaccurate. So now we had more kids than we could fit into 4 classrooms. So in order to then be able to fund that position, they accepted 10 across the grade levels to account for the error in the census. So they wouldn't have taken that many school choice kids in kindergarten had they known how many kids were actually West Bridgewater residents.
So at that point, it was too late to say we can't take these 10 children?
Well, we would have had, the alternative would have been kindergarten classes of 25, potentially, because at the time we made the decision was mid to late August, and then we wanted to make sure we made that decision so we could get kids in. And we weren't willing to risk more enrollment after we made the announcements and then have to add a teacher later. So we weighed the option of 25 kindergarten kids per class, which is not acceptable, to adding, I have here, we added a total of 11 to kindergarten, but they weren't all added at the same time, which brings us up to 99. 99 over 5 classes is much better than over 4. So that was our thinking.
So you would have 89 over 4, right?
88 over 4.
88 over 4.
With not knowing if we were going to add more during the last 2 weeks of summertime, when we traditionally do get our highest enrollment.
Yeah, I guess, I'm with Jeff, I'm a little nervous about the school choice situation, because now we have those children for 12 years, right?
I agree, and again, if school choice goes away, that's a funding deficit that we will have. And again, we, the school district, have no control nor really no knowledge of housing that's going in. Nothing's been discussed with us in terms of projections or what kind of, how many units are going in. We're completely unaware.
And I think that's why this discussion is very important, because you cannot think in a vacuum outside of what the needs of the entire community are. We know that your mission is to do the best for the kids, and we certainly want that. But knowing that we have this stuff looming on the future, I was hoping that maybe you could tell us about what you might project for what impacts or needs you're going to need. You can't just react. We need to think about, we have projections about how many houses are coming online. We have that information. And wouldn't it be helpful if we could partner to
Absolutely.
plan going forward what the impact of this is going to be on all of us,
Right.
not just the school department, but everybody in town, the fire and the police. We're concerned with the whole, and we're certainly concerned about the schools as well.
Right.
But unless we can make like some group projections, we don't know the future, certainly, but isn't it important for us to continue these dialogues so we can understand what's going on with you? We want to understand what's going on with all of the departments and think to the future. That's all I'm saying.
The Finance Committee is aware of a number of houses. That would be great information to share with the school department, so we would know what the projections are. I'm not sure, what the town had in terms of ability to, allow in certain homes or purchase land that couldn't, so therefore homes couldn't be built, whether it's open space or things like that. So yeah, keeping us in the know, I agree, is a great idea, so we can plan accordingly.
Is there anything that the town?
So,
The building department, right, should have some of that, I would
the
think.
building department has some of it. Look, I've said for years that we really need a planner. We don't have one. And so some of this is lack of communication between departments, because the building department is extremely busy, and he's one person. But to answer the question specifically that Jeff asked, we know on Scotland Street, and quite frankly, even though not everybody is going to know specific numbers, I think everybody knows building is going on. It's impossible to say, I didn't know people were building. We know that's happening. 93 homes are being built up on Scotland Street. All of them are 3 to 4 bedrooms. And obviously, the larger the bedroom size, the more capacity for families. So the expectation is those will be chiefly families. On Belmont Street, it has been permanent for 54 apartments. Almost all of them are 2 bedrooms. 5 of them are 3 bedrooms, and a couple of smatterings are 1 bedrooms. And then there are 24 apartments that have been approved for permit up on West Center Street next to the Honeydew. I will be honest with you, I think that they're going to have some difficulty building there. That's a really tough site, but they're approved, so they've got some engineering work to do. But in theory, they're approved for 24 apartments. 12 of them are 2 bedrooms, 11 are 1 bedroom, and 1 is a 3 bedroom. That does not include other subdivisions. We've had some subdivisions over the past few years. We've seen that happen at town meeting with the approval of those roads. We know over the past 5 to 8 years, we saw about 100 homes between, 35 homes between the farm and, what's the other one? Pearl Road. So all of those are all 3 to 4 bedroom homes. And there is some other small subdivisions right now that have been permitted, all like 3s to 5s for homes. So you put all that together, you're talking quite a decent amount. I remember when I first came here, the middle school had not been built yet. The old one was still standing. town meeting had just approved it, and I remember having a conversation with Patty, because Patty was really concerned about this as well, and I was surprised, because at some level, because of the way the state's reimbursement process is through MSBA, it hurts us. I believe, I'm going off the top of my head, the capacity at the middle school, high school is 825. Is that number accurate? If not, it's about close.
No, I think it's only 620, 625.
Right, okay,
Yep.
so 620.
That's the MSBA capacity.
Well, exactly where I was going with it. So when we built the school, I remember saying to Patty, we were walking the old school, and I said to Patty, I said, I assume, because the MSBA has to take in a 20-year look at it, I said, I'm assuming that this school is being built with future growth in mind. And the answer was no, because they only include organic growth when they do an MSBA. They do not include school choice children.
Correct.
So that means that when it was built, it was already at capacity. So as you bring in more organic children, that means your school choice has to get squeezed. And I think that that's a failure at the state level. I mean, I don't think that's a failure, that's a failure at the state level. In any event, those are the rules. And because we want the 50%, obviously we were going to grab that, but knowing what the limitations were. So there's no doubt that a pinch point is going to come. And so that's something that's going to have to be grappled with over time.
And again, our school choice, it is, like you had said, once a student is enrolled, they are our students. So this is a long-term potential concern. And it's a concern that the school district brings in its own funding well over $1.3 million a year. So the funding deficit would be there if we do go to capacity, and it would take years, obviously, to have school choice students graduate and not add in. So it would be incrementally a deficit, $50,000 or $100,000 a year, depending on the number. But at one point, somehow we've got to make up that $1.3 million. And it can't be by the schools can't do that. It would have to be the town.
You get 93, just take the top one, if you get 93 3 to 4 bedroom homes, just to probably a minimum of 180 kids.
I mean, we've had apartments built in town over by the golf course. I mean, the 10-year look at our student population, that has not gone up, about 40 to 50 over the 10 years. So do I assume there will be some growth? Absolutely. But we've been, in the 1300s, mid to high 1300s over the past 10 years. So with some growth, I do understand that this is probably more growth than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'll be honest with you, the Riverbend Apartments, that owner really worked with the town. We all know that 3-bedroom apartments are more marketable than 1s and 2s. But that developer was really, really helpful and allowed us to cap it. They would not allow any 3s. So it's half 1s, half 2s, which is obviously going to minimize the amount of children. Once we go to 3s and 4s, that obviously is going to have an increase from there.
Now, did the town have a say in not allowing all these homes to be built?
So when you do a 40, in the housing, so when you do a 40B, you can do either a hostile 40B, which just means we're going to do what we want to do no matter what the town says. You can do a friendly 40B. And the developer over at Riverbend did a friendly 40B. I don't want to say it was a hostile 40B at Scotland, but we requested that there would be smaller building footprints, and he declined our offer.
And again, this is out of my realm, but did the town have the opportunity to purchase this land so homes wouldn't be built?
So it was in 61A. I know he paid 3.3 or 3.4 million. So I guess the answer is yes. If the town wanted to come up with $3 million, it probably could have. To be honest with you, I think most of us were surprised after he bought it that he was able to get DEP approval. Like, I really honestly believe, say the town ponied up $3 million and bought it, I think a lot of people would have said, what'd you do that for? You can never build homes there anyway. It took him 5 years to be able to perk up there in order to get DEP approval. I mean, he tried and tried and tried to finally get to where he is today. So, but to answer your question, the straight answer is that if the town wanted to come up with that money, they would have had first right of refusal. I guess the town had that right.
So I think you know, the finance committee can't really control these things, but it does seem like there's an opportunity for some enhanced communication. I'm not sure how we make that happen, but that's something we should think about, I guess, right? But I guess when we're planning, is it solely the school's decision whether to bring in additional school choice children? Because I guess if we're gonna keep just, like as Cheryl was saying, reacting and, you know, adding 10 or 11 kids that we're now having to service for the next potentially 12 years unless they leave voluntarily, right? You know, it's a commitment, and now we need to keep that commitment, and now with these new houses coming in, I think.
I mean, those students, right now they come with revenue too. I mean,
Yeah, but
Yeah, that's-
eventually, at some point,
If I may, and I would like Mark and Kathy to correct me if I'm wrong. School choice is voted on around the beginning, toward the end of this year and the beginning of next year. Potentially, the school department doesn't know what they're gonna have for an influx of students moving into town until sometimes as school opens in September. So they have to make a decision, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, they have to make a decision that much earlier on whether they're gonna allow school choice or not. And 9 out of 10 times, because of the money that's involved, and because of the financial status of the town, being able to keep giving the money that they give to the school department, along with possibly that much more, their decision to have school choice is decided as a plus. And until there's a different method of knowing where we're going to be at year after year, it can't change. I don't see how you can change it. I'm sorry. We can all put our own theories to it, but I don't see how it can change. The school department is going to grow, and we know that. And the need for different teachers, like this social worker, are going to grow. And they are obviously needed. I know that, for example, the English learning language has doubled in students in the past 2 years since I left. They can't handle all that. They need another English learning teacher. Where are they going to get the money? Somehow or another, we have to find the money in the town. And some of it, if not a lot of it, are from people moving into town, not school choice. How do we control that? There have been 30 homes built in this town since I left the school. Tell me what the influx of the tax money is on that, Mr. Gagnon. Do we know?
No, I mean, if you figure.
I'm guessing it's around 450 grand.
Well, I think my point to that would be if there's 2 students in that house.
How do you know? We don't know what.
I'm just let me imagine for a second. If there's 2 students in that house, the town would lose money versus school choice, right? If there's 1 student in that house, the town would probably make money. I'm going with most of our town, most of the houses in this town aren't at a $10,000, $11,000 tax value.
yeah, I mean, I just did, you know, 30 times $5,000 tax bill, it's 150,000. So that's what you're bringing in, and, you know, you just, like you say, you don't know how many kids are coming.
What does it cost for us to teach a student every year?
Well, I mean, it's
Was it 13,000?
Yeah.
I mean, per pupil.
Per pupil?
Pupil is around 13,000. But Jen, to go back and answer your question about school choice, yes, we do have flexibility. We, as Mr. Holmes said, we can open up school choice and we can accept no students. We can open it up and take students in every grade, and usually it's somewhere in the middle. What we traditionally do or have done in the past, if kindergarten has been small, we've added kids. I'll tell you right now, we're most likely not adding any kindergarten next year because we cannot go to 5 sections again. So that's due to the fact of having bubble classes in the other elementary schools. The other grades that we traditionally add students are grade 7 because they go from 4 sections in grade 6, and we can go at usually 80, like around 90, we can go up to 100, 110. We traditionally lose students to Southeastern and some private schools going into grade 9, so we try to fill those spots. And then we'll pick and choose different grade levels that are smaller. So yes, we can absolutely say, you know what, this coming year,
we're not gonna add any students in grade 7 and 9 and kindergarten, say that's potentially 30 less students. That's fine, but then that gap begins. So it's all in the choices.
So next year, though, those 11 kids you took into kindergarten are gonna go to first grade, so then you're gonna be squeezed there and need you know what I mean, or does that teacher move, or,
That teacher will move with them.
you know, it's always this juggling act, and I get that.
But just to clarify, those 11 students weren't school choice, they weren't all kindergarten students.
No, I thought he said he added
There were
11 in
total.
kindergarten.
We added students in different grade levels to
Right.
make up that difference.
Oh, I thought you said, I'm sorry, I thought you said you added 11 kindergarten.
Sorry, total. We had added
Oh,
some
okay.
to start when the low census numbers came out, and then we said, all right, we're gonna add more in kindergarten to get that number up, so we have 5 sections, so it's a very reasonable amount. And then we said, all right, we can take a few more in 7th grade, we can take a few more in 9th grade.
I gotcha. I thought you added more kindergarten students to solve a problem in kindergarten, that's where I was getting.
We do, I mean, we did add a few more to get up to the 99, because why not? I mean, if you're at 90, 93, let's add 6 more. It just made financial sense to do so.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely a juggling act, I get that.
So there are breaks in the system that we can not add, and then, but then not adding then would be, now through high school, we're not adding those. So it's that amount of money every year.
Yeah.
So it's something we've always looked at very carefully. We've always cherished trying to keep our class sizes reasonable, very important for us. But we also know we have a budget that we want to fully support. So we're kind of squeezed a little bit on both ends.
Yeah,
Well,
agreed.
I think, that's school committee's choice at the end of the day, what to do there, but I think from our perspective, we probably can try to provide some insights, maybe is what we see for 5-year growth, 3-year growth, that type of thing. Especially as more houses come online, things along those lines.
Sure. We'll take any information that's available.
Because, at the end of the day, the fear is that gap,
Yeah.
and just how do we work through that gap?
But if we don't have a town planner.
Yeah, I mean, that's really it,
These
right?
folks are trying to get done what they need to do
Right.
that year, and I want to try to understand just how that is, where it is the general, and knowing that you have the others. That was very helpful, but they can't do it if we're not planning it for them, and the finance committee's not going to be planning ahead for these folks, so.
Yep.
I don't think that we could probably do this.
I think
for a
somebody in
while.
town, but somebody in town can gather information. If it's not us, it's somebody to say, okay, out of the 93 houses that are being built in Scotland Street, 7, 8, 9 will be all come online this year. They're 3-bedroom houses, they're whatever,
Yeah, I mean,
just to be
any
able to-
information you can give the school department about what's coming down the pike, they can plan better than, being blindsided in August, say, I got 72 kids coming in, what's happening, we don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And even if it had, even if we get a bunch of 3rd graders, it still would, technically be too late because they're already enrolled and that number is
Right,
pretty
yeah.
set.
Yeah.
It's a year to year.
Right.
Yeah. So something for the budget to think about is the planning position, right? Okay. So the ESSER funds, did we get ESSER 2 funds, and what did we do with them?
We did not get any, I think your question is ESSER 2 funds in fiscal year '21. We did not receive any ESSER 2 funds in fiscal year '21.
So do I have the right year?
Well, you did. And so we received ESSER 2 funds in fiscal year '22, starting in July, that we didn't know about before that.
So what did we-
$239,000.
I'm sorry, what was that?
$239,000.
239K, and have we done anything with that yet? That's fiscal year '22.
Yes, we've planned with that money, and we've used it to hire some part-time sped teacher, an English language tutor. We've outsourced social worker interns. We've hired a half-time special ed teacher at the Howard School. We have also hired English and math tutors in the elementary level.
And a speech and language pathologist who works throughout the entire district. And actually participation in the Family Success Partnership, which is a program that we can set up families with some outside assistance. So it was partially paid for out of ESSER.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, so you did a part-time sped, was that the first one?
That was to fund the middle school learning center program, which we needed.
And
That filled the
English?
gap of, if we didn't do that, we would have had outside placements for 2 students.
Okay, that's good. An English language tutor, a part-time sped at Howard, an English math.
Tutors.
English math tutor?
Yep.
They do
Tutors.
English and math?
Correct.
At the Roselle and the Howard School. So we hired 4 different tutors.
Okay, and then it was a speech and language pathologist? And
Yes.
then there was something else you said.
Social worker interns.
And what's that?
We have, we contracted with North River Collaborative. We hired 3 interns. We didn't hire the interns. We hired the supervisor to supervise the interns. There's a set amount that we pay through this program. These interns will work with students at the different buildings. They'll travel between buildings. So it's a very cost-effective way to get more services within the district.
Great. That's great. And then that last program again was, what's that called?
Family Success Partnership.
And what do they do?
They work with families. We would select up to 5 different families that the school and the social worker would work with these families to provide them services.
What, like educational services or?
Mental health services, support services, a wide variety of, potential concerns. We have students who have school anxiety, students who potentially could be suicidal. There's a lot of good for, a reasonable amount of money.
Okay. So are all of these costs or positions going to travel into this coming budget?
Well, what we've done is we've had the ESSER 3 funding, so some of these are traveling. We're going to be moving the positions over to that, as well as other grants. So there are certain needs that need to be filled, and these are the ways we're filling them at this moment. So ESSER 3 goes from FY '23 through FY '24. So we do have some more time to use this federal money. And it's important to note that when we're using this grant money, is it 9%?
9%.
9% of their salaries is taken out for retirement purposes. So if depending on the number of educators that you have, then you're losing 9% of that.
Mm-hmm.
We also actually bought some curriculum for our English language learners out of this as well.
Mark, what do you mean by the 9%? Like,
Yeah.
is it different than what because we do 9 out of our paycheck?
It is. It actually is a penalty that you pay. It's actually double dipping when you hire teachers or use federal grant funding for teaching positions. The grant has to be reduced by 9% of the salary for those teachers, and it funds MTRS. So MTRS loves it because they double dip.
So the employee's paying the 9% and you're paying the 9%?
And we're paying the 9% out of the federal funds. It's been discussed in multiple webinars I've been on, how unfair it is. No, it does not.
Okay.
Ideally, it would be best to not use this federal money for people, but that's where our greatest need is.
You don't know the amount, though, for your ESSER 3 funds yet, correct?
We do.
You do?
534,000.
So that's been confirmed?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And a little bit of change, but yeah.
Is that going to be spread over 2 years or one?
Correct, 23 and 24.
2 years. That's helpful. Any other questions on those ESSER funds? That's a tricky area. So I think we answered 3 and 4, right? So I think we already talked a little bit about this, question 5, about the influx of students you're expecting in the school choice. Can you remind me, was it 275 school choice? Or
Two-
maybe that's different now, right?
266, let me check.
266.
Is our total for this year. And again, I brought it up before, but we had the highest number of applicants this past year for school choice. We're expecting another high amount, which is great for the quality of the teachers and the programs. But again, we're gonna have to look carefully at how many we can accept.
Yeah, balance.
And again, the biggest issue for us will be the gap that's created if we can't accept the same amount. I mean, anything under the 266, or I forget what it was last year, but then if it's more, then obviously that's good because it's extra money, but potentially be less.
Yeah, I think have to balance, do you have to add staff to support them? Do you have to add services to support them, right? Because then,
In most cases, it's not that swap like it is in kindergarten. In most places, it's going from sixth grade, if there's 90, to go up to 100. We go from 4 teachers to a different middle school schedule where they have 5 core teachers plus they're taking 8 total classes, so that number can be spread out much easier. So it's more of a bonus in there where it was more of a necessity for the kindergarten.
yeah, makes sense, okay.
Or it was more of a, actually, not maybe not necessity, it's a good word, but it was a break even for that.
So do we feel like we balance out, you know, the ones graduating and the ones coming in, and we kind of balance that out over time? Or are we heavily weighted in sort of the elementary school versus the high school? Are we gonna?
You know, it somewhat varies depending on that number in 7th and 9th grade. You know, our class sizes average around, 105 to 110. Some are lower, but, usually in the 90s. So we try to stay at that, around that number. So some classes may have started out a lot lower, therefore there may be 25 school choice kids in a class, and there could be as low as 11, things like that.
So they range from 11 to 25?
And we definitely look at students who graduate. If there's 23 kids that graduate, we're looking to hopefully fill 23 spots somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on that from committee? So the per pupil expenditure, I think, can get a little confusing. So I thought it might be helpful to help folks understand how that plays into the whole budget and sort of what you're dealing with. The question came with, we get 5,000 for a school choice child, for example. We spend 13,580, and there's that balance of, fixed versus variable costs. So can you break down of the 13,580, what percentage of that approximately is fixed versus variable?
This is a formula that's used by the state. We have nothing to do. They take the same information from every district, and they pull out all the information. So, like I said, if there's no additional fixed cost if we have 90 to 100 students going into from 7th to 9th grade. It's costing us nothing to fill those seats. How it's broken down, the bottom line is, it was very clear, I think, to the presentations, that how the per pupil is calculated across the state is very representative of the lack of services we have for our students in West Bridgewater. The mental health, the EL population, the reading specialists, the speech and language pathologists. When you look across the board, you see a low per pupil expenditure and a low staffing in our specialized services. I don't know if Mrs. Dragonetti wants to share anything about per pupil, but it's hard to break down exactly, what's paid for out of what. So I'm not really sure, because we saw your questions, but there's a lot of really.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to understand, and I think others as well, is when people look at the school choice, the obvious question becomes, we're spending 13,000, but we're only getting 5. So what percentage of the 13,580 is really we would be spending on the students anyways? Or what percentage of your total budget? Or how, there's got to be some way to say, of the money that we're spending, if we have no students in the school, here's how much it would cost, you know, for lights, for heat, for, you know, the cost of the building, whatever goes into that $13,000, some of it's you gotta be able to break that down. It's just, you know, financially speaking, there has to be a way to do that, right?
It would be the teacher salaries and the operating costs of the building, which would be the same if we had 10 kids in a classroom or 20 kids. The only difference would be if we didn't have school choice, our budget would be at a deficit of about $1.3 million.
Yeah, but I guess I'd have to say, how would we possibly need as many teachers and services for, let's say, half the kids, or 266 less kids?
Okay, I'm just going to take this for a second, excuse me.
Are you, like, there's no way that we would be able to take out any
Well, if we had
of
90
the
kids
variable
per,
costs?
if we had 90 students rather than 105, you'd still need 4 sections, you'd still need
the same building, the same number of teachers, the same amount of heat, the same amount of lights.
The teachers piece is the part I'm trying to get at. So
We
you
only
still
fill-
need the same amount
Yes.
of teachers, even if you had 266 less children.
We have filled, other than the kindergarten class, this year where we added a teacher and added enough school choice children to pay for that teacher, school choice simply fills in vacant seats that exist. So there is no additional cost. We haven't had to add any bus lines, extra buses. We have not had to, you know, maybe we've added some Chromebooks.
I mean, I
for
can
them.
give you an example, like, say, I'm just looking at grade 6, there's 103 students in it, there's 24 school choice. So we would have 79 students, we have 4 sections still, so we would have a fewer number in that class, but we couldn't go below the 4 sections, we couldn't go to 3 sections with 79 students, so therefore, those 24 extra students bring in approximately $100,000.
And that's exactly what I was trying to get out. Is there any potential that bringing in the extra students is costing the town any extra money? And I think what I'm hearing is no.
No, I mean, there are times when we've added students, for example, the kindergarten, that's more of a break even. And that's the necessity of using that school choice money to be responsible and trying to pay for that on our own. But there are also many other cases, if you go through all the 13 grades that are plus side, where some of the other ones, for example, our bubbles might be a net 0. But it's not a negative.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I also just wanted to know, because the vocational school budget is sort of pulled out, is that part of the 13,000 per student, or is that a separate calculation?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I don't know anything about the vocational budget.
But when you put the numbers into the system to, you know, give the state for their calculation, do you put the vocational school in there?
I would only say that they take numbers from our SIMS data. They would take the same information as they do from Bridgewater Rainham, East Bridgewater, who also send students to vocational schools. So they're taking the apples to apples. They're pulling the same information out from every system, for every district, who also has students attending vocational, agricultural schools as well.
Yeah.
So just to, I think I've heard it, I think I understand it, the 13,580 is a state number?
Yes.
Correct.
I think the vocational school is not included in the number.
It may not be.
Yeah, I don't
I'll be
think
honest with you, I
Yeah, no, I
don't
don't
want to
think
misspeak on that.
If you go to the DESI website, they'll show you regional school districts and they'll show you municipal districts. So we're a local district.
Right.
So based on the fact that they have different categories, I feel safe in thinking those numbers are separated out. And it's a pretty basic formula. They take all of the money that is allocated to the school, they know how many students are in there, and it just gets divided. That's all, it's just a very simple calculation.
I was trying to understand benefits, things like that, they're not, so, like the state number's an apples to apples number, like if we look at this compared to East Bridgewater.
Same
Yes,
calculation.
exactly.
I would not agree with that statement, because our budget, we do not include health insurance or property insurance, general liability insurance and workers' comp insurance in the school budget. Some districts may. I'm not saying they do, but I can tell you
That would
every
increase
municipality
it,
does things a little bit differently. I'll give you an example. One of the questions here is landscaping. In their budget, you guys cover half an FTE for DPW that does landscaping work at the school. So other districts may not do that. That's an expense that they incur that others may not. But I can tell you that there are other expenses in other school districts that get covered in the school budget that's not in ours. It's just a matter of how each municipality does it. There has been a movement in the past, including here in West Bridgewater, that people have always wanted to make every budget a bottom line budget, not in the terms we know, but in real cost. So for example, in the selectmen budget, if there's 3 of us on health insurance, you'd have a health insurance line. So you'd say that's the real cost of that budget. Some municipalities did that. We didn't. But I bet you out of 351 municipalities, there's at least one that has either health insurance, workers' comp insurance, or whatever in a school budget, and then that would have an effect on that metric. But I can't tell you if it's 1, 10, or 50. That I can't tell you.
So I do know that when I report all of our numbers in the end of the year report, David, you give me the town side numbers that are reflected in the school, those go into my report.
Exactly.
So I do think that when they
Oh,
look
you
at
mean for
an
next year's
overall
spending.
number, they use some of those.
Okay.
And you're right, different districts, for example, we pay out of our budget transportation to the agricultural schools, where we recently found out that other districts don't pay that, they pay that out of the town side. So it is probably hard to say, exactly, is it always apples to apples? It's a very probably complicated formula in terms of everything that goes into it.
It's just the big one that's not in there is benefits, right? So just.
Yeah,
benefits.
and
So just trying to understand it.
And the
I don't-
benefits
Because
are
that would
big.
bump the per
They're
pupil
expensive.
cost up, and I just want to know, are we, because you hear it, we heard it last year, I'm making a number up now, but 2,000 less than this town and that town. And I just want to know, are we apples to apples, or are we not apples to apples? And the biggest line item to do that is probably the health benefit. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah.
And given that I do report those to the Department of Education at the end of each year, I don't know. They don't share the formula with us, but, I'm not as convinced maybe as you are, David, that they don't use apples to apples, that they pull those pieces from that information you give me to either include in all school budgets or exclude in all school numbers to come up with a closer apples to apples.
Well, can I ask you this? For this past year, how many total students do you have?
1395.
That's our October 1st.
October 1st report, yep, that's what they go by.
So, with that said, if that number times 13,580, that comes out to 18.9 million. So that means it's taking into account everything that you put into your school budget, which is what the general fund is. I'm going to assume
grant.
grants and school
Yep.
choice, and there's something else in that number as well, because
are the
their
benefits.
total budget off the top of my head is probably around 16 and a half.
Right.
So at 18.9, there's a $2 million gap.
Because we just do the general that we were just talking about. And the rest is school choice and grants.
Correct.
So are you saying you think this 13's low or high or?
No, what I'm suggesting is that we're not exactly sure all the numbers that are put in, but health insurance benefits may be in that number.
May be in
Because
that number.
your health insurance benefits do run around $2 to $2.5 million. So
Okay.
it's fairly close enough to make an educated guess that they may pull that information.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, that's actually really helpful, because when, we've said over and over that we're not funding enough and this and that, so I think everybody's trying to understand what's included, what's not included, where might we be short, where are we okay, it's just good to understand that, so thank you.
Could I ask a semi-dumb question?
Sure.
Sorry, it's coming from me, so it happens sometimes, sorry. But Kathy, going back to your 6th grade, saying there was 103 from the school, 103 students from West Bridgewater, 24 with school choice. And as I just sit there and go, my naive brain goes, if there's 24 kids that aren't there, is it as simple as we don't need an extra teacher for that? But what you were saying is you still have to have your 4 quadrants, you're still gonna have the same teachers. It's not as easy to say numbers are numbers and numbers equal head count.
Yeah, and I think that's important for everybody.
Because
to
we're just looking at
understand.
numbers going,
And I will
Not
say
taking
sometimes
it.
school
Yep.
choice doesn't increase enrollment. For example, if a family moves out of town to another surrounding town, they want to stay in the district. So it's not always adding numbers, sometimes it's a wash, but they're just categorized now as school choice rather than as a resident.
Yeah,
So it's more often that we get kids that come in, but we do every year have kids moving out. And so of that 266, there's probably, a good handful of kids who have been here and they just have moved out of town.
yeah, okay, that's helpful. So we talk a lot about the special ed budget. We all know that's a big expenditure for the town. Just thinking about what do you think we could do to maybe, like, are there 1 or 2 things or 1 position or 2 or, any kind of strategy that we could pursue that would allow us to maybe bring more kids in as opposed to sending them out, or, somehow maximize funding there?
That's a great question. And I think we always try to build capacity within our school. Having the part-time learning center teacher at the middle senior high school has, like I've said before, most likely saved us money. Over time, that's going to need to go to a full-time position. But just quickly, and I just want to share a couple quick examples of how we talk about the special education budget being so not fixed. Okay, that money can be increased at any time. Just a quick 2 quick examples. We had an elementary student go out on the need for a 45-day placement where they went to another program to be evaluated. The placement cost for those 45 days was around $12,000. The transportation was the only transportation we could find, and I say only after looking at multiple vendors, was $320 a day for the 45 days, which is over $14,000, so a total of $26,000. Just for a 45-day placement, we're not sure if the student will need to be placed full-time. That's money that's not budgeted for. Another example is we need to hire a full-time nurse for a student who needed care from morning through the afternoon. We had budgeted a certain amount of money. The hourly rate is $65 an hour. Finding this person was not easy. We thought, oh, good, for $80,000 we could hire someone. The per year cost is about $122,000. Because they're starting at this time of year, it's going to be just under $80,000, which is great for this fiscal year because that's pretty much what we budgeted for. But that would have been an additional, $42,000 that we didn't budget for. So those are just some quick examples of the way that this is a very fluid number. What we budget for could change very quickly. So other ways that we could, other programs, like I said, the Learning Center, having a bridge program at the middle senior high school. The bridge program would benefit students who are coming back from hospitalization and needing some extra attention. You would need to staff that with an adjustment counselor and probably an instructional assistant that would provide some therapeutic services for students. Again, the goal would be to help kids as they transition back and potentially help them before they transition out. I mean, some of these therapeutic day programs, the tuition themselves, depending if they're a collaborative program or a private program, could run anywhere from $60,000 to over $100,000, and transportation is another unknown cost that could be tens of thousands of dollars.
So are you saying this bridge program could help us not have to send some children out to potentially these more expensive
Potentially. We have 2 students right now who, one has gone from a public school program in another district to a collaborative program, so there's an increase in cost of tuition. Another one we've tried to work with within the school setting, and the needs were too much. They've gone to a private program. So is there a potential that the students could have been kept in here? Yes. There's also potential for running other programs. And again, this takes some work. This is not as easy as just saying we're going to start a program, but you start programs at the elementary level that you could keep your own kids, but you could also start to tuition kids in. Now, the big concern that we would have would be space. We don't have unlimited space at the elementaries, but it's something that would certainly help. And I think just more appropriate staff, mental health, special education.
Can I jump in for a
Yes.
second? Sorry. So, I remember a couple of years ago, Patty at town meeting, standing up very heated and saying, we are reaching a mental health crisis, that it's a wave coming at us. And that was long before we even knew COVID was going to happen. So I know I'm the newest member of the team here, and many of you don't know me, but I work in special education. And I will tell you, every single day, these kids are hurting. And we are required to provide them a free, appropriate public education. And so what happens is they come in, and even before the pandemic, they were struggling with mental health issues, and now it's exponential. And so what's happening is they can't stay in the classroom because they can't self-regulate, and they don't have those mental health skills that they need. And so we're sending kids out. We're sending kids out in ambulances. They are going out of district. They're going into placements. And every time another kid pops off, that's another expenditure that we have to pay for. And so, we talk about these programs, but it's really important for you all, for everyone to understand that our kids are really hurting. And it's not just West Bridgewater kids, it's all kids right now, at all grade levels. They're in crisis, and I would anticipate that we're going to see even more expenses as more and more kids are unable to be educated in district because we don't have the mental health staff that we need to actually keep them in our buildings.
So how does a town, though, really, and a school, take on the world's mental health challenges? Because it's a challenge everywhere. It's not just children, it's adults, it's everywhere. And with the lack of so there's already a stretched thin, in general, availability of mental health providers in the system. How do you see this playing out? Like, how does the town, any town, not just this town, but how do schools and towns provide the services that are needed? I mean, you have health insurance, right? So we have mental health parity laws, and we have all of this stuff. You're required to have health insurance in the state of Mass. There's all kinds of funds for, unfunded services and all that kind of stuff. What are we thinking that this school, the bigger school, needs in this space to tackle this? This is like a big thing.
It is, it's huge, and actually you touched on something else that I want to bring up. So I'm going to put that off to the side for a moment. Under IDEA and Section 504, we are required under federal law to provide whatever mental health services and social emotional services these kids need to be able to be educated, because we have to provide them an education. If we can't do it under our roof, then we have to pay for their placement where they can get what they need. And that can be $200,000 for one kid. And so, yes, it's a major problem. And, I've watched the meetings, and I've heard everybody say, well, why do we need a social worker? Why do we need a school psychologist? Because we have to have them. We have to provide the services to keep the kids in the seats. If we can't keep them in the seats, they go out, and we have to pay for that. And that's the biggest variable in our budget. I mean, it's massive.
I think that's what people are trying to understand.
Yeah.
What specifically is the need? What are these folks going to do? And how is that going to help the town, the schools, the budget, the kids, the whole picture, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So for a lot of kids with mental health issues, it's about having someone that understands social emotional health in the building that can bridge them from home to school. And then meeting their needs when they are in the classroom and they are anxious, they're dysregulated, and they're not accessing the curriculum because they're too busy thinking about, you know, what's happening next, or something going on at home, or anything, just generalized anxiety. They're not hearing what they're being taught. And so by having a social worker or having a school psychologist that's able to pull them out of class, meet with them, employ a coping strategy so that they can get back into class, that's what we need. And right now we don't have the appropriate number of staff to do that for the kids that need it.
So how does a department, a school, a town determine which professional, which ologist, a psychologist, you know, I don't know what they all do, but how do you determine what you need? How do you know? How do you decide?
So I can answer that too, actually. So there are variable levels. You've got a social worker, you have a school psychologist. Something that a school psychologist covers that a social worker doesn't is whenever we have a special education evaluation that requires a cognitive evaluation, we have to have a school psychologist to do it.
Yeah, they do the testing.
A school psychologist, however, can also do counseling. They can provide social emotional services. So they cover both areas. Whereas a social worker is more hands-on and is able to do the counseling services that they need, but they are also available to regular education students, not kids on IEPs, but kids who maybe would be on an IEP if we don't help them now. Because what happens is once the issue becomes so big that they can't stay in the classroom, they're now a special education student. And then that's where the cost balloons. So to Mark's point, if we start early, if we start in elementary school and we start with a social emotional curriculum and we're teaching them self-regulation and coping skills and how to access these skills that we all have on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I see you tapping your feet. That's a strategy because you're getting antsy, right? Yeah. We teach these kids. Right? So, no, but that's true. We all do. We all use these strategies. But many kids need to be taught these strategies. And so when you have a professional who's teaching them early, we're then able to keep them in district when they hit adolescence. And that is when everything hits the fan.
And just to look at the numbers, at the Spring Street School, we have 150 students. We have no mental health professionals. At the Roselle, we have about 300 kids. We have one school psychologist. At the Howard School, we have about 300 kids with one school psychologist. And up until a few weeks ago, at the Middle Senior High School, about 630 students, we had one school psychologist serving the 6 different grades. That person has since left, and we've hired 2 social workers. But as Robin said, our gap now, and we're filling it with paid-for slots for testing, but is the school psychologist in the testing piece of it. So we're missing that.
So I missed one of the schools. So 150 you have none, 300 you have one, 630 you have one.
And the Howard School has 300 with one.
300. So can I just add, and this is a baited question, you know the answer, but we have one school psychologist for 600 kids, and that person left.
Yes. Because what they're doing is their role, primarily in most schools, school psychologists test. In our schools, they test, they counsel, they run groups, they do a lot of things. Like a lot of people in West Bridgewater, where we wear many hats, we do many things. But when you have that many kids and that many needs, I tell you, when I was high school principal for 10 years, no matter who it was, I'd walk over, that door was always closed. They were always with someone or they were testing. We just need the bodies. The bodies, the appropriate bodies, will help us because it will address the needs in an immediate fashion. Kids will be seen. We won't be sending kids back to class who may have severe needs. We've had too high a number of students taken out of the middle senior high school over the past month by ambulance. We've had some major issues, major concerns. And that's not just West Bridgewater, that's everyone.
You know, I said that I was kind of putting another point in the parking lot. We all know there's staffing shortages everywhere. You go to Chili's and you're gonna wait for 3 hours because, and I'm gonna use air quotes, no one wants to work. That affects education as well. And what's happening, especially after hybrid teaching and remote teaching and just the drastic change in working conditions, is many teachers, and especially instructional assistants, have said, forget it, I'm going to do something else. And so every district is feeling the hurt of, we have these vacancies to fill. And so Mark said, you know, we tried to fill the school psychologist position. We couldn't fill it. And so the
And
odds are not there.
that's
now.
really my concern,
And
right?
it's ours
Because
too.
even if I were to go to, you know, Mass General, Brigham and Women's right now, they don't have enough
Exactly.
mental health professionals to service people in a hospital setting or, you know, an outpatient provider setting or whatever. So how do we think we'd even fill these positions should we fund them, right?
And I don't have an answer to it.
No,
I mean, it's more what we're worried about is we were already understaffed, and now we're entering something, it's gonna be a problem.
And how many do you think you need? And if we fund those positions, what does that take away from teaching English, math, and science?
Exactly. Because if we rob Peter to pay Paul, and we pay for another position for mental health, then can we pay our teachers? Well, obviously we have to require, you know, we have to pay the teachers to fill the, you know, to teach their sections. So, you know, we're just doing the best that we can with what we have.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And
And I
mental
think,
health is a huge concern.
Mhm.
So is the academic progress of our students. I mean, again, it goes off the mental health piece, but we have a district with one reading specialist, no math specialist. Reading specialist that services about 750 kids in the 3 elementary schools. It's not a sustainable number. That leads to potentially more students being identified for special education, which raises those numbers and so forth. So there are certain areas that we need to look at. And again, we want to work together to say, these are our greatest needs, and these are how we can fund them now, but these are some of the things down the road, because we know the support staff will help all kids.
yeah, I think it's, you know, to Cheryl's point earlier, it's looking at the whole picture and where does this funding all come from? Because this town is not huge. It's not a big town. And we have the same problems that we have, you know, in bigger cities that, you know, arguably have more access to funding. So I think it's really a discussion that is very timely and very helpful. I don't know what folks want to ask for questions in this space, or is this enough information for us when they bring forth their budget in the spring to, you know, have
What do you,
a discussion about it?
Not holding any, is it 3 more professionals? Is it 2
Well,
more in this space? Is it, do you have a number or not?
I think we're, you know, working through the middle senior high school now with the 2 social workers is something new for us. So we're gonna look at that, but then there's the testing piece. So Kathy Marble's been trying to be creative in terms of finding outside people who can do testing. So I think we'll know more as the year goes on. Another population that we haven't talked a lot about is our EL population, our English learners. We went from 2 years ago, 29 total students, to 57 this year. And again, 57 may not sound like a lot of students in the district.
That sounds like a lot to me.
It is, but especially when we started a lot lower. I mean, we go back to the, you know, low 20s. But we're
Last time,
talking
yeah, it
4
was
grade
2 years
levels.
ago, it was like 22, wasn't
Right.
it?
4 grades, 4 different start times, 1 elementary teacher, a part-time middle senior high school teacher. When students come in, they come in on levels. There's minimum requirements of 45 minutes or 90 minutes. Those are just the minimum. We're struggling to meet the minimum requirements. That's why we're using the ESSER funding to have the EL tutor this year. I'll be honest with you, finding the EL teacher, again, as Robin said, was incredibly difficult. We tried and interviewed, couldn't find qualified people that we want to put in front of our kids. So there's concerns we have, but we have 2 people at the elementary level now. We have the part-time at the high school level. So servicing those kids is another important thing for us, because those students, again, are valuable. They're great assets to our school and our community, and we have requirements that we need to meet educating them. So that's just another area of, okay, you know, that's another area of need that we have.
Yeah, I don't, did we say though what, I think Jeff asked, do you need 1 psychologist, do you need 2? What are you thinking you need, or is that TBD?
I think I think someone will come forward with, could we use more help at the elementary level? Sure. We certainly know that we have the largest population at the middle, senior high school. We have the need for testing. And we only right now had budgeted for in the budget the one school psychologist. The other, and that has now turned over to a social worker, and the other social worker was paid for out of a grant this year. So it would absolutely, have to be bare minimum that second person and potentially a part-time person to do some testing.
I do have a question about grants. Do you have somebody on staff who's tasked with writing grants for specifically like for special education? There must be funding available to support the kids and their needs.
There are grants available. Our special education director, that's where she got the grant for the social worker. We have a person, Devianis, who does the grants for Title I, all the title grants. She does that. She's been trained in doing grant writing. There's not as many, there's not like the public grants that they can really go out and get, but we will do any grant that we can find that will fit the needs of our kids.
Yeah, most of our
That was
grants.
one of the questions we had,
Yep.
was do you have a grant writer? And the answer is yes, you do.
Yes.
Well, yeah, she does other things as well.
Yeah.
And most of our grants are called entitlement grants, that we're awarded the amount of money from the federal government. They're not competitive grants, then we have to budget to that number. And a majority of our special ed grants are entitlement grants. So there isn't much need for an additional grant writer. We wouldn't find more money.
No,
They're
I
set
understand.
amounts.
I actually sit on a board for disabled adults,
Mhm.
so
It's a good
I know
question.
how
So
that
you
stuff
see,
works,
yeah.
but we're always digging to get more money, so.
And we also look at lists that are continually sent out for competitive grants. And unfortunately, the good news is we don't fit a lot of them because we're slightly better in terms of income, et cetera. But the bad news is we're not that much higher on the scale. We really have a need.
Yeah.
Okay. How are we doing? You got questions? Any other information you want to have? Okay. We had a budget line for technical maintenance. I think we're not sure exactly what was in that.
So I believe if you turn to the budget book that is 33 pages long and look at page 10, it should be all detailed out there.
Okay. There was like a specific question, and I don't remember who asked it.
And we have software programs that we purchase year to year, IXL, Freckle is new this year, ST Math, hardware needs, replacements of Chromebooks, Chromebook parts.
Oh, I think it was this one line, like $80,000-$90,000 as technical maintenance. Is that like software licenses?
It's licenses, maintenance, I believe
The
it's,
Chromebook leases.
it's listed right here, the narrative. Do you need me to read that to you?
Says outside contract vendor to maintain and monitor the network on a daily basis as well as network equipment, Chromebook leases and system
Yes,
repair.
and
So I forget who asked this question. Does that give us what we needed on this? No? Okay. I think that might be-
We have companies that help maintain, we have,
We share costs, the
leases.
town shares, really hires, and they share the cost among the departments. And
Okay.
we each book a portion of it to our budgets.
Yeah, and that kind of led us to what kind of technology needs you anticipate in the next 3 years. And maybe you don't want to answer this right now, but I think we need to think about that from a capital budget perspective, and if there's anything that, I know you got Chromebooks, and I think, we got funding all over the place to get those, but they
Yes.
don't last forever, right? So
They don't. Chromebooks, teacher laptops are another thing, they're about 5 years old. So we're
Yeah.
slowly replacing those in as big a chunks as we can, because obviously they're essential. digital projectors and moving away from digital projectors, maybe more towards interactive whiteboards or another major expense. It was great when it came to the building project because we got all of that and it lumped into that one big sum of money. But now that, those are, I wouldn't say they're end of life, but they're definitely getting there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Things don't last that long.
Yeah, no, I know technology is always, I feel like I bought my son a phone and 5 minutes later he said it was old and he needed a new one. So I know it's, it's a constant battle to stay up with the technology, and I guess we're just making sure that we're sort of planning for that.
Absolutely.
And if there's some funding that you're going to need, that we bring it forward so that we can prepare for it as best we can.
Right. For example, the line you mentioned, it's Chromebook leases. So we have a plan that every year we're leasing a certain number of Chromebooks. So it's continual. So, and we have a replacement plan. So they're basically replaced every 3 years at the secondary level. So they're getting ones that work. Another area that we've added some money is security cameras, in terms of making sure that we have safe learning environments both in and out of school.
Yeah.
And you mentioned capital items. We really don't have any major capital items that I can foresee.
Okay.
One of the things that I will be doing when the window opens in January, I believe, is putting in a statement of interest for an elementary building project through the MSBA, looking at our elementary schools and seeing if we will be accepted in looking at a potential building project, which could help with some of our space needs as well as some of the buildings which are older, the Spring Street and the Roselle.
Is that the one we just put the roof on?
Spring Street? I mean,
Okay.
No, we put a roof in spring.
I thought we put,
it was a couple.
I thought we did both.
Couple years.
Spring Street, they've outgrown Spring Street.
That may very well be, I'm just saying that we put a roof on
They've
it 4
outgrown
years
it.
ago.
And,
They've outgrown it.
and I think the other thing, even if a statement of interest is submitted, we won't find out till next December. And as
Yeah.
we know with the building project, the middle senior high school, it's
Yeah, it
years
takes
in the making.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, we certainly want to. We don't want to undo things we've already done in terms of spending money on a building, but I think the goal is to hopefully not spend more on something that may eventually be replaced.
Yeah. Is that the one with the basketball court we went and looked at that floods?
No.
No, that was the other school. I'm sorry, I have trouble keeping my schools straight.
Mark, you said the teachers, are those Chromebooks or notebooks that they use, are those on a lease or is that a one-time expense? And
The
you replace them
teacher
every year?
laptops,
Yeah.
I believe we bought those.
Yeah, they're not leased.
All right, and those are the ones that are like on the 5-year plan?
They're 5 years.
Did you buy any through the CARES funds?
We have put in for, I think, the middle senior.
We were
high
doing
school.
ESSER
Yes.
funds. The only, I don't think we bought, well, wait a minute, we did buy, did we buy 120 laptops?
All right, good.
Through Plymouth County.
Exactly, that's the
Yes.
CARES funds. That's
And I
correct.
think there's a little more time until December for that. I didn't know if there was money left.
We have 2 weeks.
All right.
But again, like last year, we tried to replace all Chromebooks, so we should have taken advantage of
We
that.
Oh, yeah, we did.
We did.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
good.
the-
That's- I
the
just wanna make sure we
leases
did.
will still, there's still the ones that are gonna be out.
Yeah. I have a meeting with them next week because they're certainly winding down the program. And the problem that we also encountered is even though the funds are technically available through the federal government, the state government is no longer under a state of emergency, so what used to qualify doesn't qualify anymore. So we're having difficulty getting approval on some items today that 6 months ago and 9 months ago rolled right through. So I don't know,
Yeah.
I hope we took advantage of it to the best
We
we
did.
could, because that's good news, that's good.
Yeah, I know, a lot of times leasing is a better strategy because of the technology changes so quickly.
Yeah, usually these are leased to buy, I believe. I think
They
at the
are.
end of the 3 years, we basically own them.
And then we use them for the elementary.
If they're,
in there.
depending on the
Yeah.
working order.
Okay. So I think we talked a lot about the behavioral health professionals. I don't know, is there a per pupil statistic, or is it just really too variable to sign something like that? Is there any regulatory requirement or just a general one that says you have to give the kids what they need?
I think it's more of a good faith.
Yeah, I don't know if this is off the top of my head, maybe there are certain, I don't think Massachusetts has any requirements for caseloads. I know, I'm a speech pathologist by trade, and, you know, our governing body says that we should have 40 kids on our caseload. Now, in Massachusetts, however, that's just a guideline. In Massachusetts, it could be anywhere from 20 to one of my previous districts, I had 65 kids on my caseload. So, you know, as administrators, they really need to kind of balance what is considered a manageable caseload / workload for the professionals.
Okay. I think we were trying to understand too the administrative personnel, sort of per pupils, how do we fit in the general area bucket of administrators per student and that kind of thing. Do you have those kind of statistics?
I mean, we can put numbers to the number of administrators. I mean, it equals out to about 127 per administrator, but that doesn't really give you much information. I mean, we have myself, we have a director of student services, director of curriculum, business manager, technology director, head of building and grounds, principal to middle senior high school, assistant principal, middle senior high school, Howard principal, Roselle / Spring Street principal, and an athletic director as what I would call our administrative team.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's light in the, you know, in terms of elementary, and a lot of elementaries will have an assistant that may travel between buildings. But would I say that's a need right now? No. I mean, I think it would be great, but I wouldn't come to the town or the school committee and say we have to add that.
Okay.
Or potentially a dean of students at the middle senior high school, but I think they're definitely bigger priorities.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I think in general, we don't really, you know, it's pretty, you know, equivalent to what other districts would have.
Okay. I think we just talked about capital requests, so I'm assuming you're giving that some thought, right? 3230 to 5101. Is that back?
Let's get back on page 6, I think.
Oh, yeah, I have it highlighted. So contractual benefits. I think we went through this a little bit. Is that just the retirement, buyback, and sick and vacation for, is that
Yes. Yeah.
administrators, everybody? Is that a certain bucket of people?
It's all retirement sick time buyback
For all?
for all.
Oh,
We have,
yeah, I think we
early
were trying to figure
retirement.
out, sorry, if the administrators and the teachers were in there, if it was
Correct,
just
they are.
teachers, or,
Yes.
In their
It-
contract, there's an early retirement incentive that they can qualify for if they've been there a certain number of years. So what we have to do is budget for that. We look at, they have got to let us know by December 1st, so we know how much to put into that line.
okay. I think we were wondering if it included any raises or bonuses for anybody in there?
It did not.
It does not.
It does not.
Where do you budget for raises and bonuses?
Excuse me, what?
Can you negotiate that right here, bonuses?
Yeah.
So we don't have any raises and bonuses?
Not in that contractual benefits line, no.
Where do we budget for that stuff?
Right in, because the teacher raises are contractual, they're all budgeted right in the line
In
items
there.
for each of the teachers.
Okay. I felt like there was some kind of bonuses that were talked about, maybe not last budget season, but the one before, when Patty was still here. There's no bonuses?
There are no bonuses. Maybe it was a different department?
No, it was definitely, it was
No.
definitely like the superintendents, I think. Am I making that up?
I
You
mean,
don't remember?
I mean, I've never looked at their contracts, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I know you have goals. I don't know if there's bonuses tied to goals or not. I don't know.
there
I mean,
are
I'm just,
not.
I don't know.
I don't know, maybe I was making it up, I don't know.
I will say, I looked at Mark's contract, and I looked at I's contract, and they're very different. So I
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it was Patty's that I'm thinking of. So we just wanted to see if we could get that green sheet added back in next time when we
Yeah,
present it. I
did
think
the
we.
second meeting, did we get that to you?
Yeah,
last
I
year?
think you did.
Okay.
So we just want to keep that
Sure.
going forward if that's
Basically,
not
it's
too
just
much
that
trouble.
informational sheet that, I think we have it here, but just not green. Just kind of provides you just the overview of some of the big numbers, correct?
Yeah.
Whatever it's a COLA or a step and track, that's easy to do.
I think it had like sort of the number of teachers and stuff year over year, right? So we wanted to be able to see that trend.
This one did not have that?
No, it didn't, but prior to that, we were getting that information. So that's just really helpful to understand, you know, what's driving some of the budget lines. Let's see. So part of the thing that I feel like the committee was saying they were struggling with was how the school contribution funds are allocated, you know, because it's like a moving target every year. They move around from line to line. So we were wondering if, from a presentation perspective, if we could, you know, sort of have it presented as, here's the budget, and then sort of the bottom line is, and these are all the funds we're getting from grants and school choice and whatnot.
Sure. That's easier than splitting up that 15%, you know, into each various
Yeah.
line that frankly change year to year.
Yeah, and that's what
And
made it
that's-
confusing,
It
I
was a
think.
moving target.
Yeah.
We didn't know what was happening.
Nope,
Yeah.
that's fine.
I think, are we done?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so a number of times it's been mentioned that needs aren't being met. So we just wanted to know sort of, and I think we talked a little bit about this. We talked about some mental health professional or behavioral health professional needs maybe not being met. Are there other needs, the language, we talked about the ELL?
Speech and language, I know we talked about before.
Yeah.
Occupational therapist would be another one that we added.
Occupational therapist?
We
Yep.
hired a part-time CODA, certified occupational therapist assistant, this year at a reduced cost than hiring a full-time person, again, that could work under the OT, so that, again, is part of our ESSER money to help service kids. And we talked about the reading specialist as
Was that a
well.
part-time OT?
Part-time, OT assistant.
Oh, assistant.
So, no, I think we've highlighted the needs, and we understand that there are needs and we have to justify them.
Yeah.
And we want to explain them. And we'll always be as transparent as possible as to, you know, these are the needs and these are why we can't address these needs financially, you know, if it's outside the budget.
Yeah.
Like I said last year, we're more than willing to use ESSER funds to supplement this as long as we can. But at some point, it's gonna come due that this ESSER funds, these funds.
Yeah, they're gonna end.
We'll need help if we're gonna service the kids in a manner that we feel is appropriate.
Yeah. So it sounds like in the general, what I would call education bucket of the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, we're okay. It's more in these specialty services around behavioral health, English language, language pathology, that kind of thing, that is really where your biggest needs are. Special ed, yeah, in general.
I think that's an accurate statement.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions? Anything that you needed to go back over? Anything we missed? I mean, I think this was super helpful for me. I'm hoping it was helpful for others, and I hope it's helpful for the people that watch this, the townspeople, because ultimately they're the ones that decide, you know, what money gets spent, how it gets spent, where it goes. So I think having the transparency is extremely helpful.
You know, so I want to say thank you, because you didn't have to come tonight. We didn't have to do this.
Yeah.
But it's great that we can, work together and try to get get the town what it needs and get the student what students what they need as well.
Yeah, because it really is a partnership. And, you know, when we sit up in front of the whole town and say, yeah, we think the school's right here, I know me, when I say I support this budget, I want to understand it well enough to say I support it. So I'm sure that everyone on the committee feels that way. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think that's why we're all here. We're volunteering our time, and obviously we care. So we want to be able to support and work collaboratively with everyone in the town. So it's great to understand the needs.
And we appreciate it. I mean, I think we want to work as a team. We want to work with you. We want to provide you the information that you need, answer your questions. As we begin to build the FY23 budget, there'll be opportunities to come in. You can meet with Kathy and I, you can ask questions. The school committee meetings that we have, you're more than welcome to attend and again, ask questions. Because I think it's only going to be positive moving forward if we continue to talk and have these good open discussions. Because these are needs that we have, and we won't be bashful about saying they're needs we have, because we're there to support our kids, and we understand everyone's got a certain role.
Yeah.
But we'll do what we need to do to help, provide information to get to a point where I think we're a good spot for the kids and the staff and the families of West Bridgewater.
Yeah, no, we totally appreciate it, because at the end of the day, I mean, you guys are living this every day, and the average person is not. So they, we really need to help them understand what we're trying to do. Everybody wants their child to have the best education they can, so I don't think anybody would argue with that. And we're very fortunate to have, really high-level professionals in this town that work with our kids every single day.
Thank you.
You wouldn't want to throw out a number. You think it's too early?
A budget number?
Yeah, a percentage increase.
Oh, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, we didn't.
We'll start with 10.
Just take a wild guess.
Just set his feet on fire.
Keith, did you start the fire? Because we're putting the feet right up there. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
for taking the time.
I hope everyone
Very
has a
important
wonderful
that we
holiday
understand this
season.
information.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we have to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
To adjourn. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.